A wise man once said, Akhi. I heard you shake. Don't think I didn't hear that. You saw that one. Father Sensei, Bismillah.
Just one quick question. When you mentioned there's a situation where I had donated a couple wells in Africa, right? And then I think one or two of them I had actually had my name put on there. This well was built by so and so.
Mm-hmm.
Do out for
Mm-hmm.
put the sign there. Now that you mentioned what you mentioned, but what my intention was the of course to seek the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And I knew these people didn't know me, right? But it would remind them just to make dua for me. So with that was going too far about getting your name put on there.
Clear. A person donates or endows wells in any place of need, Africa, wherever it is, make dua for so-and-so who paid for the well, who donated the well, etc. Does that fall into riyah, or wanting to be seen by men, wanting to be heard by men, so on and so forth? So these are based off of intentions. One who wants the people to make dua for him isn't the same as one who wishes to be acknowledged. Isn't one who wishes to feel superior because my name is there. So that's automatically a difference. However, your name being placed there, no doubt, it's not a guarantee that you're going to fall into prohibition, but it's a greater hazard. It's a greater risk. It's a greater risk. No name versus name. Just because your name is on the thing doesn't mean you have bad intentions. Doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you're showing off, especially if you want people to make dua for you specifically. But is a step closer to danger versus a step further and closer to safety. Last but not least, a simple solution would be, wallahu alam, is to encourage the people and remind the people to make dua for the one who donated it without the name being mentioned. Kill two birds with one stone. Those whom you're in contact with, you make sure, listen, man, tell the people to make dua for me. I need a dua. Inshallah, I get the reward, the water, the village, the people need the water. They don't have to walk 10 miles carrying big, heavy plastic, cans of water. And encourage the people to make dua for me without the name being mentioned. So that's the best way, that's the safest way. But for argument's sake, just because your name is on it doesn't mean that it's haram, or doesn't mean that it's shirk. It doesn't necessitate that. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Ustad, fadl. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Concerning that hadith of the seven qualities of the individual that you just talked about, one of them was a young man who grows up in the deen until he gets old and dies. Is that for the one who was born Muslim, or that's for the one that's also for the one who took shahada at a young age?
Understood. Well, does that include someone who took the shahada at a young age and then grew up as a Muslim? Or is it specific? Is it exclusive for someone who's born and raised as Muslim? It's included, inshallah. Linguistically, shabun, a young man, nasha'a, who grows up, who's raised. So included in that. However, the superiority for sure is the one from day one. Because that's the ultimate manifestation of youth, and that's the ultimate manifestation of being raised from day one. That's the ultimate raising verses 9, 10, 11. Allah, today, a young brother from our community, he accepted Islam. His name was Jules. And after he took a shahada, he's 10 years old. Yeah, youngest person I've given shahada to before, right after Jumu'ah. And he said that he wanted to change his name. And the brother who brought him to the masjid was like, saying, he's on my back, Sheikh. He said he wanted a Muslim name, give him an attribute, give him a Muslim name. So I asked him, I said, what's your personality like? I asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. He said he wanted to play professional baseball, second baseman. I said, may Allah make you successful in that. So I said to him, what's your personality like? He said, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm quick. So I asked him, I says, how's Fahim? He said, I like that. I said, well, your name is Fahim. meaning intelligent, wise, and understanding. May Allah make him firm. 10 years old. He's accepted Islam today, alhamdulillah. So, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, inshallah, he'll be included in that as well. But the level of someone being born from day one is, that's a different level. And that right there is, it should be motivation for young Muslims, especially here in this masjid. You know, there are many different cities, masjids you go to, but there are certain things that are specific to Philly, or not specific, but just amplified here. The amount of Muslims, the generations of Muslims, you know, second, third, fourth generation, 50s, 60s. It should motivate you to remain steadfast. And if you have, I'm speaking to myself before anybody else, if you have mistakes or errors or shortcomings or flaws, work on them. And most importantly, hide your ugliness. Though I'm keeping it real, I ain't being fake. I'm not that type of person. I'm not that type of individual. I ain't got to act like that. That's all trick from the shaitan. You have no shame. Hide your faults. Make dua for your faults to be rectified. Have shame in front of Allah, in front of the angels, in front of yourself, and in front of the people. So shaitan tricks people. I'm keeping it real. You keep it real, you can go to hell. It's reality. You're going to keep it real all the way to Jahannam. And when you see the gates of the hellfire, you'll know reality then. Keeping it real. Shaitan tricks people, right? It ain't about being fake. It ain't about trying to be something that it's not about that. But it's about being ashamed of your sins, not publicizing your sins. And how Allah will forgive everyone except for those who publicize their sins. So that's very dangerous. So if you're doing the right thing, you're born and raised Muslim, second generation, third generation, in this masjid, other masjids, you should be happy, you should be proud. And if you're born and raised Muslim, and you're wicked, you're astray, you live in a whole different type of crazy lifestyle, it's not a good sign for you. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jal, He calls them Ahlul Kitab. It's not an honorific title. It's not a praise of them. But Allah's calling them Ahlul Kitab to wake them up. You have prophets and messengers. It isn't foreign to you. You know about Musa. You know about legislation and Tawheed. You're supposed to accept Muhammad because you're Ahlul Kitab. As far as the Mushrikun, they're misguided. They have no knowledge. They follow their ancestors and their forefathers. They have no scripture. They have no type of spiritual cultivation. But Ahlul Kitab, you're supposed to know better. So you're born and raised Muslim. It's crazy. You live in that type of crazy lifestyle, and your first name is Abdul Aziz by birth. It's crazy. You know, it's really sad. You know, somebody who's getting these tattoos, who's doing this, that's one thing, you know. I had these tattoos before I was Muslim. You know what I mean? Versus I'm born and raised Muslim, and I'm tatted up. It's sad. It's a real sad situation. May Allah help us all. Wallahu alam. Right, anybody else before we see if we got something online? First question is coming from Queens, New York. Initial ZA. Are Doritos halal? Well, that depends. Cool Ranch or Nacho? Hello, alam. What flavor, huh? The new bag? The blue bag? Allahu Akbar. What's important is, all jokes aside, the general rule, and I want to say this openly, the general rule is that anything that's a part of the food industry and anything that has different types of artificial ingredients in it, and any brand that is iconic, when you see it, you know it. Wherever you go in the world, Dunkin' Donuts, KFC, this and that's an icon. In most cases, they're going to cut corners and they're going to take severe shortcuts with their ingredients, one way or another. A dye, a this, or that. There was a rumor going on. Some people said it was a rumor that McDonald's was using lard to heat their coffee. It's a real argument. Some people said it was a myth, and some people said it's factual. They were using lard in coffee. Okay, and if you read some of the sites that discuss, you know, this rumor, they were saying that they need to bring the coffee to such a high temperature in the quickest amount of time possible. So it was an issue of chemistry, and this lard was allowing the coffee to get hot and stay hot really, really quick. 1 million people served, right? 1 billion people served. The drive-through line for breakfast at McDonald's, how long is it? Around the corner or not? They need a coffee. They got to go to work, right? So donuts, bread, cheese, meat, sugar, so all the industry. You'll find some type of chemical, some type of this, some type of that, one way or another. That's a general rule. Does that mean that everything is haram? No. Does that mean you can't have a donut? You can't have a slice of pizza? You can't use sugar? Does that mean you can't have American or provolone cheese on your hoagie? We say in Philly, or if you're somewhere else, a sub or a hero, whatever you call it, a grinder. We're not saying that, but you definitely got to be mindful. And there are two extremes. There are those who make everything haram, from 7-Up to Mountain Dew, Jolly Ranchers, Starburst. Cool, everything is haram. Soap is haram, toothpaste has pork in it, everything. Everything. Right? Rice Krispies, huh? I tell you, marshmallows, etc. Everything. And then there are people who go in the other extreme. They don't care about what they eat. It's all tayyib, bismillah. It doesn't matter. Just say bismillah. Is a balance. So I don't know about Doritos being haram. There's a long discussion, which I'm not going to get into, about cheese and cheeses and even bread. I mean, people talking about halal meat. The meat is haram. The meat is halal. You have a pizzeria, right? You think that you have halal meat, but the cheeses that you serve, the bread, the crust, the dough, you'd be shocked at some of the ingredients and commercial dough and flour. You'd be shocked. The donuts that you eat. You'd be terrified of some of the stuff they put in that stuff. So balance, be balanced, right? Say bismillah. And if you buy a bag of Doritos, make sure you buy another bag for another brother, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. That's a long discussion. I'm not saying Doritos are haram. MD Atib from Hyderabad, India. The Modern Dawah Group, moving forward. MD Atib, Hyderabad, India. To whom does Allah give tawfiq in good deeds? Those who strive and those who fight themselves. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا. Those who fight themselves for the sake of Allah, Allah supports them and guides them. JJ from the Philippines. Please mention your town, your city, in the Philippines. Jazakallah khairan. Questioner MD Atib from Hyderabad, India, is looking at the number of likes of an Islamic post you made Riyah. That's overthinking, and that's from Waswas. You posting a video only for likes is obviously a problem. But you just looking at the statistics, it's not necessarily haram, but be mindful. ID from Fort Worth, Texas. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti. Being that we're living in frightening times, could you give a class or two on the end of times based off of the Quran and Sunnah? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khairan. Ayas from London, UK. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti. How do we deal with desensitization of women and deal with sticking with one woman for the rest of our life? Marriage, as most women don't accept polygamy. Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Or you mean like a person being desensitized with regards to being around women? So many women, uncovered or whatever? Allahu alam. As far as dealing with sticking with one woman for the rest of life, if you need another woman, another wife, because there's so many women, or whatever the case may be, marry another wife. This is something that Allah has commanded you to do. Some scholars hold the view that polygyny is obligatory and not recommended. Some scholars hold that view. Some scholars hold the view that the default is 2 and not 1. What's important is that if you take on another wife, you try your best to do it properly. And that's the bottom line. What a woman accepts or rejects or this and that, none of that is to concern you. I'm the man, I'm the imam, I'm the provider, I'm the protector. Bismillah. That's the bottom line. And obviously there's a long discussion about polygamy or polygyny. And FYI, people say you have to say polygyny. That's not correct. In English, the word polygamy is interchangeable and you can use it just for men with multiple women. Let alone the fact that, is there a need for us to say polygyny? There is no women marrying multiple husbands. That doesn't exist in our deen. So there's no need to, it's like the Arabic language. There are certain things that are specific to the feminine sex, the female sex, that doesn't need a ta. such as menstruation. The word for menstruating woman is not ha'idatun. There's no ta needed. Ha'idun, because men don't menstruate. So there's no need to feminize the word. Everyone understand this? There's no need to put a ta on the end. All right? So many people, they get caught up. They get stuck on the glue trap. Right? Unfortunately. What's important is, a long discussion concerning polygamy, the ins, the outs, the dynamics. One thing that I want from here is don't be hypocritical. Do not demand perfection in polygamy, but you accept imperfection in monogamy. That's a big problem that most people, most Muslims have. Man with a second wife, this money has to be perfect. This has to be just 100%. Everything has to be, the planets and the stars, right? Quote unquote, must align. Jupiter, Saturn, everything has to be perfect. But you know daggone well, your husband that you've been with all these beats you up, cheats on you, disrespects you, he's cheap, he's a miser, he has very bad character. He's not the best husband, but that's totally acceptable. Your daughter, your mother, you come from this house, monogamy, that's messed up, no problem. And the people, they don't demand nor request perfect monogamy. But polygamy has to be perfect. That's a big of nifaq that most people have. Keep it real. A man being with one woman isn't going to be happily ever after, right off in the sunset on a white horse. And you know that. You've been married, divorced how many times? Your mother and father, how many times? How much stuff you see them go through? Stop being fake. But just because you have another wife, a third wife, now you automatically have to be perfect. And the sister involved in that situation has to be perfect. And everything has to be perfect, etc., 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 etc. I don't have no problem with it. I accept it. But, however, if it's done right, why do you need to stipulate that? When a man asks for your hand in marriage, do you say that you have to marry me in the right way? Did they say that, Aqib? They don't say that. But if it's done the right way, I'll accept the second wife. So be careful. Be mindful of that. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Next question says, Ya Allah. A.S. Abdul from D.C. I had a child out of wedlock before I came to Islam. Is he a mahram to my wife? What's important is there are things that are applicable even if it's of illicit relationship, illegitimate, and there are things which aren't. If you have a son, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, you follow the rules to the best of your ability, but at the same time, you do not neglect the fact that he is your son. A big problem here in the United States, this child is from zina, so therefore he isn't a mahram. I don't have to pay, I don't have to, etc., etc. The boy looks just like you though. And he wants to be your son, and he has no other father figure in his life. You just neglect him and ignore him. And if you had a son before Islam, are you going to have this son deal with your wife as a total stranger and not your son? So you got to be mindful of that situation, whether that's a yes or no to that answer. And that's a big problem. Wallahu a'lam. Question is coming from AA from DC. Are you familiar with the books of Maqdisi and Nawawi and the Revolution by the book? Are these books beneficial references for teaching the basics of the deen? I don't know what that is. I'm unaware of that. AM from Atlanta, Georgia. Is it permissible to get laser hair removal on certain parts of the body? At the end of the day, there are some problems with that. The exposing of certain parts of one's aura unnecessarily. A couple weeks ago, I was in Kansas City, and I was asked a question by a sister, and there's no shyness in the deen. The sister, she asked a question about laser hair removal, and how if she doesn't get the hair removed from her body via laser, it would be extremely uncomfortable for her, a great means of discomfort, so on and so on and so forth. Is it permissible? Can I get this hair from this part of my body removed by laser, etc.? So obviously, I try to explain to her what's best, what's the safest thing to do, so on and so forth. So she said, well, you know, is it a necessity? Is it halal for me to expose my private area because of necessity, so on and so forth? So I said to her, no one can determine to you what is or what isn't a necessity. To me, it may not be a necessity. I'm not a hairy type of guy. So someone who has a lot of hair, sweating a lot, itching, scratching, extremely uncomfortable, that person, he may consider it to be a necessity. So you have to make that judgment. You have to use your own prudence, being sincere, being honest with yourself. With regards to exposing your odor, exposing your body parts, and the effects of laser hair removal, the general ruling is that hair is of three types in Islam, three categories of hair. There's hair or types of hair that we are commanded to keep and honor, take care of. And there's hair that you're commanded to remove. And then there's hair which isn't spoken about in Quran and Sunnah. And you're free to do with it whatever you want to do with it. So the hair that you're honored to keep, that you're commanded to keep and honor is what? The beard for the man, a woman's hair, not to shave her head, eyebrows of a woman, etc. The hair that we're commanded to remove, mustache. First and foremost, for a man is commanded to trim his mustache. You have to trim your mustache. Whether you shave it, whether you trim it, what's important is that the mustache and the beard is not to be the same. Armpits, so on and so forth. The time, every 40 days, every Jummah, etc. And then there's hair, which there's nothing is spoken about it. Your arm, your leg, your back, you do with it what? What you want to do it. But that doesn't mean that you unnecessarily expose your odor or have someone touching your odor, right? Waxing and laser, or if something is harmful to your body. So just keep that in mind. Wallahu alam. We'll make our last question, or tight. Malish, we'll take a few more brief answers. Fadl Dawood. Bismillah.
Oh, okay. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wassalam salam.
When you're talking about like having kids out of wedlock, so inheritance, are they included into the inheritance also equally in how the law says how to split your inheritance?
Understood. It's a yes and a no answer. Like we said before, due to the fact that they aren't children of the bed, then they're automatically excluded. They're automatically barred and banned from certain rulings. Halal, haram, mandatory, recommended. And the correct terminology for a child from halal intercourse, nikah, or right-hand possession, is the child of the bed. Most people say the opposite, which is wrong. The child from zina, the child from jahiliyyah, they say, oh, that's a child of the bed. That's incorrect. The Prophet ﷺ says, al-waladu lil-firash. The child belongs to the bed. وَلِلْعَاهِرِ الْحَجَرِ. And the fornicator receives stones. The fornicator receives nothing, regret and remorse, etc. So what's meant by the bed, yani sahibul firash, the owner of the bed. Meaning this was my wife and she lay upon my bed. It's a legitimate, it's a licit child. And the child that comes from zina, in which I didn't own the bed, quote unquote, that isn't the child of the bed. And most people, especially here in the city, they say the what? They say the exact opposite. The child of the bed is the lawful child, not the opposite. So at the end of the day, if the child isn't of the bed, the child isn't legal, then there are many things that are haram. That's a fact. But at the same time, in this country, zina, in the world, not just this country, but we're talking about our country, our city, zina is so rampant. Divorce is so rampant. Single parent homes are what? So rampant. Broken houses. Women raising men. Men raising girls by themselves, etc. It's a big problem. Blended families. Deadbeats. People not taking care of their kids. It's a huge, huge, huge calamity that we suffer from. Your legal children that came from your loins, you refuse to pay for them and take care of them. And a woman, she goes to the court, she takes you to child support, and you huff, you puff, you boo-hoo. She took me to court. I stuck for the law. That's haram. How you going to take me to court? Oh, that's evil. You got the kuffar, blah, 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 blah. One must accept his failures, just as he accepts and owns his victories. This is the bottom line. She took you to court unjustly. You got to suck it up and take it. She took you to court because you're not there for your children, you're not spending and providing them. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? So it's a big problem. So a man who has children from zina, they aren't my kids, they're from zina, so I don't have to look after them. And they just fall in the line with the other statistics. And then it encourages me to do what? Make zina again. And have another illegitimate child because I got to provide for him. That's a problem. Child looks just like you, walks just like you, talks just like you. They're interested in Islam. They want to be around you. They need you in their life. You say, I can't. You're not. You're from a halal relationship. You can't come over my house. My wife is here, such and such. You can't get none of my money. You can't. In certain times, certain places and situations, that's how it should be. But in Philadelphia, in which your son from marriage, you neglect and abandon, you leave to the streets, you leave to the dunya, has some liability and responsibility has to be taken. Let alone the fact that our inheritance is so messed up. Most of us don't even understand the proper rules of inheritance. And we confuse inheritance with a will, which are two separate entities. The will is not inheritance. Inheritance is not the will. Your estate, do you have a will? And then the people, they take the money and they fight over the money. Inheritance is totally different. A portion that Allah has mandated, given to the wicked child or the righteous child. Whether you like it or not, this is their haqq. And there are only certain people who can inherit from you. Even those who share your blood don't get inheritance, or this amount, or this portion. A will is totally different. A third of the wealth, etc. Even if it's a person not a Muslim, etc. So on and so forth, right? Giving somebody money that isn't your heir, etc. So if it was me, if I had a son from Jahiliyyah, I would try my best to make tawbah and thank Allah for Islam and for guidance. And perhaps by being a father figure for this child and trying to raise him and trying to fix him and trying to correct him, perhaps there'll be a means of my forgiveness. And someone has to look after this child. Someone has to protect this child. You know, and we're not dealing with isolated situations. A child of zina should not lead the salah. That's a fact. A child of zina shouldn't be the imam. A child of zina in general should be shunned. But that's then and there versus what? Here. He comes to the masjid. I want to pray. I want to be righteous. I want to do the right thing. So some liability and responsibility has to be taken. And I think that you should, if you want to give sadaqah to anybody, give sadaqah to them. Even if it isn't called inheritance. Even if they aren't allowed to legally inherit from you. Because technically he isn't your son. Technically he's not your ibn. No doubt about that. That shows you the harm of zina. The boy looks just like you, but technically what? He's not your child. He has no right to him, and vice versa. Because of the zina. And that's the danger of zina. Even if he takes shahada. Him being a Muslim and a believer has nothing to do with how he was conceived and born. You with me? Wallahu ta'ala alam. And that's a long discussion, huh? Question is coming from St. Louis, Missouri. And this was AK. Assalamu alaikum mufti. I currently have government-sponsored health insurance that's income-based. Well, because I have a new job, I no longer qualify. My employer offers insurance, but a portion will be deducted from my salary. Would it be sinful to enroll? What about for dental plan? Or should I only stick to what's necessary? We have full discussion of the rulings of insurance according to Quran and Sunnah. You can check that out on HadithDisciple.com. The general answer is, if you have medical need or medical necessity, you take the insurance and use the insurance. Even though there are many problems with the commercial, conventional insurance. And you taking care of your dental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. Rather, many diseases and illnesses, people can die from lack of dental hygiene. I was watching a documentary once, and it was talking about medieval England or ancient England. It was talking about the Tudors and their reign and the different advancements in their society and the different degenerate points of their society. So they came across a bunch of skulls from that time period. And the scholar was speaking on how these people were victims of the sugar rush, the sugar craze from the Caribbean, Jamaica, Cuba, so on and so forth. The slaves there that worked on the sugar plantations, and how these people, they went crazy when they had quick, easy, cheap labor versus getting sugar from the Muslims in the Middle East, Egypt, etc. Sugar from the Caribbean for their tea, for their cakes, for everything. They went crazy. And it was such a bad sugar rush, a sugar addiction, that countless people lost their lives and died. So the interviewer said, well, how do you know they died from this? He said, look at the skulls. Look at the teeth. You see, this is rotted all the way to the jaw. The teeth are missing. The teeth are knocked out. And then when their teeth fell out, when their teeth became rotten, their gums, they got infected. And infection spread throughout the rest of their body. So the moral of the story is that your teeth are no less important than what? And your heart and your kidney, etc. So if you're going to use the insurance, which could be haram or is problematic or etc., 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 is no difference. A need is a what? A need. That's the moral of the story. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Questions come from M.E. from Phoenix, Arizona. Explanation. قالوا يا رسول الله متى وجبت لك النبوة قال وآدم بين الروح والجسد قال أبو عيسى هذا حديث حسن صحيح غريب بارك الله فيك النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام مكتوب من الأنبياء هذا في علم الله تعالى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام مكتوب ومقدر من الأنبياء من أول الخلق والله تعالى عالم. Am I, if someone asked me for financial assistance as they were stranded on a trip to a Christian conference, knowing the trip involved worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would I be sinful for helping them? Leave it alone. Don't do it. Assalamu alaikum. He doesn't speak when people are moving forward. N.A. from Orange County, California. What should we do when we get urged to urinate in congregational prayer? As I know it is disliked to pray while feeling the urge to urinate. Relieve yourself before you pray. Wallahu alam. Beware of waswas. AFRA from Bavaria, Germany. Heard it ain't good crying at night alone because of jinns. I do that sometimes, though. It's enough to read, etc. If you cry at night for the right reasons, there's nothing wrong with that. The jinn live in our world. They exist. They see us when we don't see them, in the daytime and in the nighttime, in the bathroom and outside of the bathroom. Put your tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ASC, Ismail from Ohio. Next question. TA from Stokey, Norway. You're quite eloquent, Allahumma barak. Is it this quality acquirable or is it inherent? Jazakallah khairan for your kind words. As we have explained before, skills and talents, there are things that you're born with that Allah gives you, and there are things that you have to acquire. So a person could be born with intelligence, a person can be born physically strong, a person can be born eloquent, etc. And if they study, if they practice, if they put time in, they'll only become better. So my advice to you is practice makes perfect. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Next question is coming from AFRA from Bavaria, Germany. Someone I know wants to use vape without nicotine. Should I continue to try to convince them or not? Or is this permissible? Jazakallah khairan. Warn them from that. Stay away from vaping. Nicotine, whatever is in the vape, you're not going to lose by avoiding it, let alone what that could lead to and what you could end up vaping, which has worse than nicotine in it. Give advice for them to leave it alone, stay away from it. There's no good that's going to come out of it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should knows best. We'll stop here tonight. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam wa barak ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabina wa imamina Muhammad.